Greetings. We're back at it again. You and I get tired of fuzzy thinking. You ask a straight question, you get fuzzy answers. You can't get a straight answer this day and age. Well, my friends, this is the show for you. My show is called Let's Be Clear. And on this show, we plead and really ask and beg and evoke. We do all of those things for people to be as clear as they possibly can. Imagine that, a real answer for a real question. Wouldn't that be different? Imagine where the world could be if we got an honest answer for an honest question. Well, you're going to get it on this show, and especially this show. On this show, we're going to speak about our reminiscences of 9/11. Now, I have brought together a panel that actually can speak of it from a position that, God willing, none of us want to be in. But if we are, God willing, we'll be half the men that these fellas coming up are. If we could just be half of what any of them are, it would be a better America. Now, I would be less of a Marine if I did not start the show by saying about those 13, the last 13 who were killed in Afghanistan, and letting people know that 11 of those 13 were from my unit. I'm 2-1. I am a 2nd Battalion, 1st Marine Division, the old breed, also known as the quiet professionals. And the age, I went in at 18, and I saw the age of those people. That was me. Those there, but for the grace of God, go I. I would have been on the wall at that moment. And the fellas after me will be able to explain this phenomenon far better than I. But my hat is off, of course, to the Marines again. 2-1, the most decorated part of the Marine Corps, which means that we do the most dying, but the most decorated branch in the Marine Corps. And that was 2-1, wading into the crowds, trying to bring some humanity or keep humanity going in a very difficult place at a very difficult time. And you know what? 2-1 would do it again if called upon. We do it again and again and again until we get it right. So on that one, speaking of getting things right, I have a lieutenant colonel who has I would argue, a message from God that he can actually share with all of us. And he knows a little something about, not simply about war, but he knows a little something about survival. And he also knows something about the internal wars. No, I'm not talking about the Texas State Senate. I couldn't help that he is a senator from the great state of Texas, which is in a talk about warfare. My God, I expect the 82nd to be deployed to Texas at any moment, but I won't go there. The Marines are on standby, sir. Be aware.
Yeah.
So, having said that, sir, would you be kind enough to introduce yourself and speak as you see fit on your reminiscences and what lessons, if any, you believe that Americans should take from 9/11?
Yeah. Well, first, Senator Sanders, thank you for the invitation to join you today. I am State Senator Brian Birdwell, but in today's political world, sometimes state senator is not the most prized title. It's Lieutenant Colonel, retired, United States Army. And on the morning of September 11th, I was Lieutenant Colonel Birdwell, serving as a aide to a flag officer in the building. The Pentagon is 5 rings. The E ring is the outermost ring of the Pentagon. And so I was in an E ring office facing toward the Lincoln Memorial, Arlington Cemetery direction on the outer wall of the building. both my principal and my deputy. I was the aide to the deputy, but our aide, Colonel Williams, to General Van Antwerp, our principal, took both of them out of the building over to the DoubleTree, and Sandy and Cheryl and I settled in for what we thought would be a slow day. About 9 o'clock, we did what everybody in New York was doing when they were getting that, first phone call, or the turning the TV on, whatever the alarm mechanism was that you received that this was not going to be a normal day in our nation's life. We went into Miss Minnick's office, turned it on, and shortly thereafter saw Flight 175 crash into the South Tower, and that confirmed that neither were accidents. I knelt down with Sandy and Cheryl and just led a quick prayer that said, Lord, we love our first responders, but because of the magnitude of the size of New York, how difficult a city it is to move within, and it's the two largest office buildings in that city, that you're the one that's going to be doing the bulk of the life saving today. And when that prayer was over with, we continued to watch events unfold. About 9:35, I'd had my James, I'd had my morning Coke that morning that, all of us, need to have that jolt of caffeine to, when you're at the desk at 7 o'clock and such. I needed to step out, go to the men's restroom. I would tell Sandy and Cheryl, I was going to step out and I'd be back momentarily. Those were the last words that I would speak to my two coworkers. There was never any thought that we were next. When I stepped out into the E-ring hallway, the hallway is in the middle of the ring, and then there's offices on each side. The offices that we had were on the side that looks out toward like I said, the Arlington National Cemetery and the Lincoln Memorial. The other side of the E-ring looks at the D-ring. But when I stepped out, I walked through what would collapse. My window, where my desk was located, was 4 windows from where the portion of the Pentagon that crumbles. On the left side that breaks off cleanly, my window is 4 windows over. So I step out, go to the men's restroom. I walk through what would eventually be the impact point and what will eventually collapse at the 27 minutes after impact. The corridors are the spokes that connect the rings. So I turned left up into the 4th corridor, went to the men's restroom, came out. I'm in front of the elevator just before you turn right. As you're facing outward, I'm about to turn right to go back into what is the impact point and what crumbles. So though my desk was on the left-hand side, I'm actually behind the first window on the right that's still the window frame, not the window itself, but the window frame is still intact. So that when the building collapses, it crumbles, and there's a section of the building that forms on the right lower side, a triangle of debris. At the 2nd floor, I'm about 5 to 7 yards behind the window just to the right that hasn't crumbled. So I'm 15 to 20 yards from an 80-ton jet coming into the building at 530 miles an hour with still about 3,000 of its 5,000-gallon payload of fuel. And you don't survive that because the Army made me the toughest guy in that building. You survive it because toughest person to ever walk this earth in human form, who sits at the right hand of the Father, is still in charge and still sits on his throne advocating for his children. This was not like one of Governor Schwarzenegger's movies. You asked me to give you my recollections, James, and before we continue, I'm happy to share brutal detail, but it is exceedingly graphic. I'm not going to show you anything graphic, but I just wanted to get, that parental warning out there.
You may want to give 30% of the truth, sir.
Okay,
They can't handle more than 30%.
Well, it's a great story of the Lord's grace, but I am set ablaze. I go from a well-lit hallway in charge of my faculties and aware of my surroundings. And then you hear the sound of the impact. And look, I was a heavy forces guy, big artillery, big tanks for the bulk of my career. And I've been around a lot of loud things, but nothing as loud as that 757 hitting the building. And in that nanosecond of hearing it and thinking bomb, I'm then tossed around like a rag doll, set ablaze. and I'm now at the peril of my life. And there are three pains and emotions that I will deal with. First is the physical pain of the burns. I was burned on 60% of my body, with about 40% of my body being a third-degree burn. My arms from fingertip to armpit on both arms are circumferentially grafted. They were a complete third-degree burn loss. The facial area, my eye sockets had to be rebuilt. My ears are artificial cartilage forming something of a helix. The forehead's been reconstructed, back, neck. I mean, I'm not the $6 million man, but the 2.4, because I got not just my medical care, but I've got artificial things like Integra, Transite, some other things in me that allow grafting to adhere to bony areas and I'm very blessed to still have my fingers, arms. In fact, many months after the initial attack, Dr. Jordan is part of the medical. It's the nastiest thing you'd ever want to see, but they put maggots on me for 3 days. And it's just little pieces of rice crawling all over you. It's just the Lord's nastiest, if not his least creation, but did for me what the doctors couldn't do. And had the maggots failed to get the Pseudomonas staph, other things that leave the body a clean bleeding wound ready to be grafted. Because if you graft over infection, you're wasting your time. But had they not succeeded, then Dr. Jordan told us that the next step was to amputate both arms at the shoulders. As I'm struggling inside the hallway, the first pain and emotion is that physical pain of the burns, but the most immediate life-threatening injury is the inhalation injury. I'm breathing in that slick, petroleum fire residue, the aerosolized jet fuel. I mean, it's like going home and turning your oven on to 300 degrees and stick your head in there and breathe. And the lungs do the same thing that the body does. When you touch a stove that's hot and you get that blister, the lungs, while I'm burning on the outside, as I'm breathing this in and it's burning my lungs are beginning the process of blistering. So I'm slowly beginning the process of drowning on the inside from fluid being gathered to my lungs from the blistering. I struggle to get to my feet. The Lord knits us in our mother's womb with that desire for life, call it survival instinct or zest of living. But there came that moment that as I'm struggling to get to my feet, and I can only get to all fours. I mean, the sense of balance in my inner ear is destroyed with the explosion, the vacuum, and the concussion. I get to all fours, but I come to that realization of the seconds and minutes that I'm struggling here, that I'm coming to the reconciliation that I am not struggling to survive. I reconcile myself that this is the manner in which the Lord's calling me into eternity. And in that moment, I screamed out in a very loud voice, Jesus, I'm coming to see you. And it wasn't a Lord, save me from this calamity. It was the recognition that I'd crossed over that line from the desire to live to the acceptance of death. I collapsed to the floor. And in those moments at that culmination, that second pain is the terror that grabs your heart when you realize you're facing a life-threatening injury and you cannot escape the source of what is killing you. That darkness, the only light's the ambient light of flame. Some of that flame is, of course, is immediately in front of me, consuming me, but some of it is in the periphery. But there's this yellow orangish arc of light in front of me, and then the outer perimeter is just complete blackness. That panic that grabs your heart.
Sure.
There's just there's no words in the English language to tell you what that gravity's like. And then I collapsed to the floor, began the process of going from that calamity to the peace and the quiet and the silence of knowing I was about to enter eternity with my Lord and Savior. And the third pain and emotion in that moment, while I was ready to be with the Lord, that, in 1971, I'd accepted him as my Savior. And so there was no concern about where I would be in eternity. But the permanency and the finality of death, that morning when I'd stepped out, and at about 5 o'clock in the morning, I got to catch a 5:15 bus to get to the building in time and all that. y'all in New York know a commute a lot better than I do, but that permanency of knowing that the manner in which I'd said goodbye to Mel, but just by kissing her on the cheek and then looking at Matt, you know, you don't wake your 12-year-old up at 5 a.m, but had I known I was stepping out to my death, I would have said goodbye with far more rigor than I had that morning. There's no shame there, James, but it's just those things that, you know, laying there thinking about, I know I'm about to be joined with the Lord, but I'm going to miss Mel and Matt until they join me in eternity. A number of miracles will occur. And again, I don't want to be graphic, but I'm skinned alive. My leather shoes, my leather belt, and a portion of the pants in the front from where I'd collapsed and was face down waiting to die. My back is completely burned away. The back of my legs are burning away. I've got some pieces where scars in the legs where the pants melted to me. But I used the wall that I've been blown up against to work my way down the hallway. Because when the Lord wasn't, you know, in our sinful nature, I'm like, okay, Lord, you know, come on, let's get on with this thing. You know, even in my death, I was being impatient with the Lord. And yeah. And I could see in the distance, it'd be like what you would expect if you're a ship at sea. You can't see the bulb of the lighthouse, but you can see the reflection off the surface of the water. Mm-hmm. The smoke is filling up the corridor. And so what I can see is not the lights in the ceiling in the distance, because about halfway down, all those lights have been shattered. There's no light. It's all in the far distance toward the A ring, the innermost ring in the Pentagon. But I can see the light reflecting off the tile. So I knew which direction I needed to go. I used the wall that I've been blown up against. And as I'm staggering, using, you know, third and fourth point of contact and shuffling, essentially using the wall, as I'm coming out of the darkness toward the light, smoke is filling up the ceiling, but I can start to see the injuries to my body. I can already feel my face swelling. My eyes were, they weren't fully shut, but blinking. You could tell the thickness of my eyelids from the swelling of when I'd blink. And there are chunks hanging off of me. I come across 4 men, Bill McKinnon, Roy Wallace, John Davies, and Chuck Knobloch. And I knew Bill. Bill and I had been classmates together at Command and General Staff College, but the other 3 gentlemen I didn't know. But I was, from the exhaustion of covering 25, 30 yards in this condition, and also the relief of knowing I'm about to subordinate myself to whatever decisions my comrades in arms make on my behalf. I collapse in front of Roy. They grab me to pick me up. This is not a place to tarry and wait for medical care to get to me. We are still very close to the crash site. In fact, the fire door, the facilities managers have closed the fire door between the A and the B ring to seal the fire in the corridor. Had Bill, Roy, Chuck, and John not come out, I'm assuming I would have eventually gotten to that door and either died of smoke inhalation or my injuries had they not come out. They each grab a limb and give that first exertion to pick me up, James, but I don't come with them because burned flesh just comes right off. Mm-hmm. So Chuck is the biggest of the 4, rolls me onto the left-hand side of my torso. And then while the others are holding me balanced, Chuck puts his hands underneath me, under the back. And essentially, Bill, Roy, Chuck, and John, instead of grasping me, they're gripping each other's arms with my body weight resting on their connected arms. They carry me into the B ring door they came out of, into a passageway to the A ring. And they'll place me in the hallway at the intersection of the 5th and 6th corridor in the A ring, where those 2 corridors intersect. And it'll become a hasty triage site. A great Air Force doctor named John Baxter is coming down the staircase, evacuating the building like everybody else, but he's grabbed his go bag and he's heading to the DiLorenzo Clinic It's not a hospital, but it's a pretty rigorous medical facility for a building of 35,000 people. It's more than a first aid station, as you can imagine. He comes across me and some of the other people that have been sit there. Dr. Baxter will take my shoes off because that's the only place when he takes the shoes off and what's left of the sock underneath the leather, takes that off, puts a morphine shot into my right foot, puts the IV into my left. A wonderful lady from the Navy, Natalie Ogletree, will kneel down beside me. She'll say the Lord's Prayer, the 23rd Psalm. She'll read the 91st Psalm over me. I am still have my mental faculties about me, but I am not in control of my body. And I'm trembling violently, and I'll just let your listeners and viewers use their imagination. But in the hallway, the death I was dying seemed to happen so slowly. But the care from Dr. Baxter and then evacuating out of the building was probably about 35, 40 minutes, but it seemed to happen like the snap of a fingers. I'm eventually taken to, and I'm passing over a lot of stuff here, Senator, but I'm eventually taken to Georgetown University Hospital. And that's the Lord. I mean, it's already clear, I believe, that the Lord's put the right people at the right time with the right training that would allow me to be with you here 20 years and 5 days later. But the most seminal miracle that the Lord performs that day is the director at the emergency room director, the trauma director at Georgetown is Dr. Michael Williams. Before Dr. Williams becomes the director, because Georgetown's a teaching hospital, before he goes to become the director, he spends 2 years in a trauma fellowship under the direction of Marion Jordan and James Jang over at the Washington Hospital Center, learning how to be an emergency room doctor so he can train other doctors. And Dr. Jordan is the director of the Burn Center and the president of the American Burn Association. And the reason yes, sir. And the reason that's so seminal is right after impact at the Pentagon, Vice President Cheney inside the White House Situation Room will turn to Secretary of Transportation Mineta and tell him to shut down all airspace in the United States. So medevac helicopters are set down. So I'll remain at Georgetown for about 5 hours, because normally in an emergency room, it's airway, breathing, circulation. And once that's stabilized, then you're evacuated to your specialized care. Nobody's moving. It will be about 4:30, 5 o'clock, because I get to Georgetown about 11:05 time frame. It'll be about 5 o'clock before they move me. That's after the FAA allows the MedStar helicopter to come over and pick me up. In the emergency room, it's like a battle drill. A lot of intensity, voice commands, but no chaos. Dr. Williams comes to the left-hand side. My eyes are nearly closed. So I'm just looking through slits in my eyes and I can see in his the gravity of the situation. And I knew it in my heart, James. I mean, the Lord had answered the question of life or death in the building, but the question of life or death that day hasn't been answered yet. And in the voice commands that are being thrown around, the only thing I understood was normally with the burn, if it's a ring, bracelet, necklace, if that's the part of the body burned, normally that jewelry has to be cut off of the burn survivor, because as the body is swelling, that jewelry becomes a tourniquet. And normally that in cutting the jewelry off, the jewelry is destroyed doing so. So when Dr. Williams says, Colonel Birdwell, Brian, we're going to do the best that we possibly can for you. And I told him I wanted to do two things. And speaking and breathing is very difficult. In fact, he would tell Mel when she would get to the hospital about 3 hours later that I was 5, maybe 10 minutes from respiratory arrest. So I got to the hospital just in time. So I told him I wanted to do two things. I wanted the wedding ring taken off my finger, but I didn't want it cut. And Judith Rogers, the nurse that had answered, one of the many nurses that answered the all hands on deck call, reaches for the ring. My fingers look like 5 blackened hot dogs extending from an exceedingly well done steak called the hand. Judith gives it a slight tug. When she does, she pulls some of the chunks off my finger. You can see the exposed bone of the knuckle. Blood is streaming out, and I don't recall it hurting, James, and not so much because of Dr. Baxter's morphine shot, but in every circumstance of physical pain, the emotional pain always outweighs the physical. I'm thinking about saying goodbye to my wife and my son through the symbolism of that wedding ring, not how much it hurt to have the ring taken off. Major John Collison had come with me in the back of the vehicle that took me to Georgetown. Judith hands the ring to Major Collison, and I said, give that to Mel and tell her that I loved her. And then I asked for the hospital chaplain. Chaplain Cirillo comes to the right-hand side, and she just leads that prayer that, Lord, if you've brought Brian here, that under your care as the great physician and under your direction of Dr. Williams and the team here at Georgetown, Brian survives. We'll salute that flag and move out with that mission. But if you've brought Brian here and under the care and compassion of his fellow Americans, you quietly call him into eternity. We'll salute that flag too. And James, there's so many things up until I'm anesthetized that I remember, not with a photographic memory, but very clearly. And the thing that, watching that ring come off my hand, looking at John, there's so many things. And the thing that I will remember more vividly than any is when they place the mask over my face. They start to tilt me back because they're about to intubate me. They're applying the anesthesia, or what's at least going to put me under initially through the mask. And that, okay, Lord, I'm either going to wake up in your presence or I'm not, but I'm ready for whatever eventuality. And so when I look at Dr. Williams, when that prayer is over with, I say, let's get on with it, resting in the comfort of knowing who's in charge of my eternity. And that would be the beginning of a months-long hospitalization. And look, I'm sure we'll get to it in questions, but a burn is a terrible injury. But what has to be done to you medically to survive it is worse than the injury. And my total, to reach what's called maximum medical improvement, my last surgery related to September 11th and the reconstruction of the face, the ears, the eye sockets, other things, was September of 2005, 4 years. And there'd be, a couple months, next hospital, next thing, couple months, that kind of thing. But it wasn't 4 years of straight hospitalization, but it's a great story of the Lord's grace.
Yes.
He is our assignments officer, and that while we certainly have compassion for the families that lost loved ones that they will not see till they're in eternity with them, for whatever reasons the Lord chose, over the last 20 years, I've gotten to see things that we thought Mel would see as a widow. Matt's graduating from high school, college, getting married, and a fabulous daughter-in-law, Anne Marie, and two grandchildren, Elijah and Lily. The Lord's blessed us. Romans 8:28, the Lord brings good out of what man meant for evil for those called according to his purpose. And
yes,
so it's a great story. And I think I've filibustered you enough here. So I'll break here.
Well, as a person who grew up in the church and at Christian fundamentalism, I absolutely understand what you're talking about. And I'm almost feeling sorry for those who don't understand what you're talking about. And all I can say is you all need to go to church and find out what he's talking about. And it's if you don't know, you really should.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there is a God, and you really gonna have to make your peace one way or another.
Yeah.
And that's just my way of saying amen, sir. And having been close to death myself, I understood some of what you were saying. I was in a situation where they did not think I would make it from that, or if I did, I would be 70% paralyzed. But
Yeah.
man, what you talking about is way you talking some new age stuff, sir. This is way beyond what most people could deal with. Now, everybody has a story, and everybody's story is different, and everybody's story is unique to them. And the beauty of telling these is that we're not trying to top each other's story. All we're trying to do is help America get more of an understanding of the day, more of an understanding of the day. Brother Taylor, I'm coming to you, sir. Give me some of your understanding of that day. Where were you? What were you? Why were you? And let's take it from there.
Well, I first want to just thank you for the invitation to this esteemed panel of individuals to talk about this important subject. And especially want to thank the good Lieutenant Colonel and yourself, Senator Sanders, for your service. Definitely appreciate my father was a Marine when he was alive, and definitely a big cheerleader. I was a sergeant in the missing persons squad for the NYPD in 2001. The purpose of the missing persons squad is to identify those who are victims of mass casualty incidents, such as plane crashes. And so the morning that it occurred, we were housed at One Police Plaza, which is the headquarters for the police department in Lower Manhattan. And when the first plane hit, I looked out of my window and it looked like a small plane. Because it was so high up, we didn't understand the magnitude of the incident. When the second plane hit, because we were gathering our stuff and we were getting prepared to go, when the second plane hit, they evacuated headquarters, police headquarters, out of concern that it would be a target of the next plane. We ran down, myself and some of the detectives that I worked with, to West and Vesey Street, and we reconvened at a triage center behind One World Financial Center, which is diagonally across from the South Tower. And we arrived there about a minute or so before the first tower collapsed. When it did collapse, we were separated. And I had never heard that sound before. I couldn't see what was happening because I was behind the building, not in front of it. And a big black cloud came, and I thought that was going to be it. And what occurred was that this black oily cloud of whatever toxic mix was what resulted. Eventually it lightened up enough from complete blackness to a grayish haze. I then found one of my detectives. We went to a facility a couple blocks down the street. The athletic club is no longer there. And we were able to get some stuff to clean up and find out what we were going to do to reconvene. And while we were there, the second tower fell. And we could see like a tornado of debris coming by both sides of this facility, which was, just, it was incredulous. I don't have words to describe it. I went back after second tower fell, trying to find that detective that was missing. Eventually we did reconvene. But at that point, we as the unit had to reorganize, went back to police headquarters and got the orders that we were going to set up our operations at the morgue. And from that day until we finished rescue and recovery operations, that's where I was stationed. That's where I worked with the forensic teams, the forensic investigators that tried to identify the victims and bring solace to the families of those who perished that day.
Of course, gentlemen, you will forgive me if my words are very slow, and there's no words that I can give. I'm a wordsmith by what I do for a living, but I tell you, there are times when there are no words that you can give. Brother Heavey, why don't you bring us on home with your reminiscence of this day, sir?
Well, first, let me also thank you, Senator Sanders and Senator Birdwell, for your service and for your story, Keith, Professor Taylor. I bring a bit of a different perspective. Unlike Professor Taylor, I was not at Ground Zero or the World Trade Center, but like probably dozens, if not more, I was supposed to be there. I was at the time working for a marketing firm on Park Avenue South. We specialized in financial services, advertising, and marketing. And one of our clients had 5 floors, floors 101 through 106 in Tower 1. And that's just above the impact point of the first plane. Everybody who showed up for work at that financial services firm perished that day. I was scheduled to be there at 8 a.m., was on a New Jersey Transit train heading into the city early, and got a call on my cell phone that the meeting had been postponed till the afternoon. So I went to my office on Park Avenue South. I remember all of our executives huddled around the television set, watching incredulously as these planes hit the first tower and then the second, and just could not understand, myself and many other people, just except for God's grace, would have been there and would have joined the 2,606 that perished at the World Trade Center site that day. I got to witness people walking up Park Avenue South, covered in dust and chalk and all kinds of debris, not knowing where to go. And I got a call from, there's an old New York City institution on 18th Street called the Old Town Bar. It's one of the oldest Irish bars in New York City. And got a call from the owner saying, "Can you come down here?" I said, "Why?" He said, "We need people to give free beer out to everybody showing up." Because people are coming up Park Avenue South and just finding any place where they could get solace and get a drink. And from about 10 o'clock in the morning until roughly 8:30 that night, I became a bartender and just tried to console people and kept trying to get a signal to get through to my wife and my family to let them know I was okay, because you couldn't. The lines were jammed. And somewhat ironically, 3 years later in 2004, I joined the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, which runs the subways and buses, which were certainly affected by 9/11, and immediately was assigned oversight of our "If You See Something, Say Something" campaign, which has become national. We licensed that to Department of Homeland Security back when Janet Napolitano was the commissioner. And we have licensed use of that slogan worldwide to over 600 entities now, including the entire country of Nigeria. So it's something that has been successful for us, and always a constant reminder to me of that day. But how all of us came together to heal, and how we still come together to try to fight this terrible scourge of terrorism that still is with us today, even more so in many cases.
Well, Brother Heavey, our brother, the Lieutenant Colonel, can tell you that one of the saints of the Catholic Church was a brewmaster, was was a brewmaster. So I'm not a Catholic, but uh, the Lord does work in mysterious ways, and and who am I to say what the way of the Lord is on any given day? Uh, I will I will say that I thank you for your story, and especially I needed the brew part of it. I guess that was God in His grace, putting all of us and keeping us in a human thing, because this an inhuman situation, no doubt. But in it, you will find so many cases of not only heroism, but you're going to find just downright compassion. People being beautiful, regardless of race, creed, or color, just compassion. And let's be clear, I'm sure compassion is a human thing, but you saw the best of America in that time. You also saw the absolute best of America, where I I was I'm 1 or 2 years older than I couldn't join. I tried to get back into Marine Corps, uh, uh, and they of course told me that there were other ways to serve. that that age had closed that window on me. I went in Marine Corps in '75, my friends. That age had closed that window to me, so I was not going to go back to the grunt units where I was from. But like any decent American, I wanted to get back into the grunt units. That way we could catch up with the gentlemen and give them some good old American hospitality, good old New York hospitality, which New York is famous for. But
Put some relish on his hot dog, James. That's what you're saying.
yes, we would have done all kinds of stuff, and at the end of it, show them how to sing the Star Spangled Banner in whatever language. But you got to sing this song till you get it right. But okay, all right. The madness, the Marine Corps madness is overtaking me, my friends. And only those close enough would understand the absolute madness that the grunt units, the actual, I don't know, the guys with the guns, the guys who run against the other guys with the guns. We have our own type of madness, and we do see ourselves now. Let me tell my Republican brethren, I am a progressive. I'm a Bernie Pratt and all the rest of that stuff. But let us be clear. As a good Marine, I understand that there is a war. And I understand that there are those who want to do damage and hurt, harm to America. And I also understand that as a good Marine, as a good progressive, you're not getting past me. You are absolutely not getting past me. Now, we can talk, we can reason. I encourage us to do so. I'll respect whatever book you want to, that you hold holy. I'll respect. We could talk, let us reason. Heck, I may even agree that you got some reasons to be mad, but you're not going to visit it on these folk anymore. And that's just the way the Marines are, and I'm sure the Army, Navy, I'm sure. And you know what? I would dare say that's the way every American is too. We need to really figure a way to get beyond some of this foolishness that separates us, and understand that that this is a place that we love and love dearly, and love enough to not simply die for, but to live for. So I commend you, Lieutenant Colonel, for finding your second trade. And but I also could commend you, Mr. Heavey, for the there is the guilt that all Americans must feel in a time like this is, did we do enough? And all of us have to answer it in our own way. And the answer, of course, is no. However, God has grace and mercy. So I encourage all of us to find a way of healing, to not turn on ourselves, to figure a way to show love. And at the end of the day, that is the only thing that's going to get us through our own lives and the lives around us. If we could figure out how to love one another, including we got to figure out how to love these guys who got some madness and are aiming at us.
Yeah.
We protect ourselves. Yeah, let's be clear. We protect ourselves. We make sure that it doesn't happen, but we've got to listen. We've got to love enough to listen, and they need to listen too. Now it's a conversation. Well, there I go thinking. Now, how do you handle this, Brother Taylor? How do you live life? Okay, 9/11 took place. Now, how do you live, and what difference are you making in the world around you?
Well, to this point you were speaking about how do we manage all these differences amongst us. I seem to remember something about being able to disagree wholeheartedly with someone, but willing to defend their right to speak their mind and to the death. And so
Yes.
this idea of America and the ability of that identity to be first and foremost in who we are as a country is how we were able to get through 9/11. All
Yeah.
those differences between us became petty, and we saw that we needed to help each other in order to make it through that crisis. And so you asked, how do you deal with that? You deal with that by working to make the country more prepared, working to make you as a community, as a person, as a community, more prepared to handle crises, whether it's man-made or naturally occurring. And so the creation of the Department of Homeland Security and National Incident Management Systems, the better formulating of the intelligence capacities for the various federal agencies, and the fusion centers, and the things that were done, the training and equipment resources given to municipalities so that their first responders can be better prepared to handle a variety of large-scale incidents. And that's what I think the lesson was that we learned, that we needed to be better prepared from the local level to the national level. And so personally, I forgot about the computer crimes I was trying to get into, and I instead went to the SWAT/Heavey rescue team called Emergency Service Unit, and got a second master's in national security studies from Naval Postgrad School, and worked on a FEMA urban rescue team. And I expanded my understanding of what I could do and what I should do to serve. And so my function now as a professor at John Jay College is to expose students about the importance of citizenship and civil service, and commitment to ensuring that our country is successful and that future generations are able to live in safe and secure communities, and as a country, the same.
Man, you need to write your book too. I mean, I got so many books to read right now. You're just making it hard on a guy like me. But I'm in awe. Brother Heavey, what lessons do you believe come out of or should come out of 9/11?
Well, lessons that I think we've all had to revisit and relearn during this last pandemic. I mean, bringing people together and overcoming something as horrific as this pandemic is akin to, I think, what was necessary after 9/11. I think one of the reasons that I joined the MTA was to become a public servant, just like you, Senator Sanders and Senator Birdwell. You want to make a difference. And obviously, the New York City public transit system is essential to the recovery of New York City after 9/11, the same as it is essential to recovery of the city after this pandemic. So I'm trying to do everything I can to bring our riders back, to help the economy of New York City come back. And I think in tandem with that, I think what I'm probably most proud of is our anti-terrorism campaign. We have evidence of several incidents targeting New York City being averted because a citizen followed that advice. They saw something, it wasn't quite right to them. They said something. One great example was the attempted bombing in Times Square, where a street vendor actually said to a reporter, when they asked, what advice would you give people? Said, if you see something, say something. So it works. We know that it works. We know we get calls every day. Most of them are obviously benign, but the fact that you have averted potential disasters makes me very proud that it's a campaign that does work and continues to work around the world.
Incredible. My friends, time, of course, is not our friend. And all of you are going to be given a closing remark. I'll go last with you, Colonel, since I started with you. And Mr. Heavey, you, when I finish speaking, I'm giving you enough time to get your mind together. And well, for the Army, it takes a little longer. So that's why I'm giving the Lieutenant Colonel more time. But my friends, I really am grateful to call you my fellow Americans, that it is true that the oath that we take is for life. That we were going to make sure that all enemies, foreign and domestic, nobody, you could disagree to your heart, knock yourself out with your disagreements. I am going to defend your right to disagree to the death. I'm going to, I made my Bible and all kinds of ideas may have me disagree with some of people's lifestyles and stuff, but I'm going to say that they got a right to it. I don't think it's right, but I'm going to insist, and I'm going to make sure that they get a chance to hear my conversation and why they're wrong. Defending it doesn't mean that I just don't say anything. No, I got a right to speak too, but we really got to figure us a new way in America. I know this about the foxhole, about being in a foxhole. The most important thing about being in a foxhole is can you stay awake? Not anything else. First and foremost, can you stay awake? Because if you fall asleep, I don't care how good a shot you are. I don't care anything. If you fall asleep, it doesn't matter. The second is, can you hit your target, et cetera, et cetera. Way down on the list is what color you are or any of these other things. Those things are way down on the list if you want to live, of course. Your first and most important one is, can they stay awake? And B, can you hit your target? And maybe if we get primal, if we could just get to those type of things. Brother Heavey, it saved me from myself, from going into, obviously, never bring a Marine. You don't bring us to nice places. We don't know how to act. Bring the Army. They know how to do those cute things. We don't.
Oh, okay.
You're last, sir. You're last. Brother Heavey, what do you want the American people to know?
I think your analogy of a foxhole is appropriate. We are still threatened by enemies, foreign and domestic. And as I said earlier, I think we all have to not fall asleep, not be complacent. We travel the same roads every day. We travel the same bus, subway, train. We know our surroundings. And if you see something that is out of the ordinary, you need to say something. Don't be shy about it. You may save a life, if not many.
Well put, sir. Brother Taylor.
Thank you. And again, I have to express my appreciation for being included, Mr. Healy, for the lives he saved, and the same thing, sir, for you, Senator Birdwell, and Senator Sanders. All of you are exceptional gentlemen, and I think really have important points to express about where we go from here. And so my message is simple. We have to look after each other. We have to take care of each other. That if we choose to work against each other, then we can perish together. And so all those things that I talked about in terms of being prepared, I became an emergency manager because of my concern about being preparedness as a discipline. And so the skills that we have to be determined to make this country stronger, safer, better, so that the next major incident occurs, we can save lives. And so, my concern right now is that we're losing ground and that we don't have deliberate action or policy. And so that is my hope, and whatever work I can do to further that cause, I will do. And thank you all for doing the same.
We are our brother's keeper. Senator, Lieutenant Colonel, Senator.
Thank you, James. I think Mark's analogy to the foxhole is right. And then in addition to that is there was a phrase that I'd learned from some great leaders I had in the Army, disagreement's not disloyalty. We can have our disagreements, but let's not let disagreements turn us into enemies amongst ourselves. James, if you or Mark or Keith are being threatened by somebody, you as my countrymen, whether you're from New York, Texas, somewhere else, those 50 stars mean that we are countrymen in the same national foxhole. And whether one of those 13 Marines was in Texas, down in the valley. I got to visit with his state senator a few weeks ago, but you see the different places in the states, California, Tennessee, that union of ideals, though each state will have its disagreements as to how it wants to practically apply those. When you have paid in blood,
Yes.
freedom is even more precious. And I want to make sure that your listeners know, no matter our maladies and no matter our disagreements, this is still the greatest place on God's green earth to call home. Because just like you, my friend Marine, and we've been to those places that it's still God's creation, but it isn't great. And no matter our challenges, man, that day I came back from Korea, landed in San Francisco. The day I came back from Central America, landed in Houston. And the day I came back from the first Gulf War and landed in Philadelphia. This is a special place. Let us not forget that. This is a fabulous, magnificent country that we call home. God bless each and every one of you.
I echo that with my God bless each and every one of you. You guys are really, I would argue, inspirations to the idea of America at a mini one, where we could really come from some vast different places and have vast different political positions, but come to the conclusion that that this is, a blessed place, this place, America, and B, we should be a blessing to the world. We absolutely should be a blessing to the world. Having said that, you gentlemen were certainly a blessing to me. If I ever make it down to Texas, sir, if they ever give me a passport and I go to the great nation of Texas.
Well, you're already learning, James. You can even train a Marine.
Well, I heard I may be able to come in, but you might not let me out. But be that as it may, if I ever can make it down there, I'm gonna look you up, Senator, and I just want to shake your hand. And if I ever get out of junior high school, Brother Taylor, if I ever, finally, I mean, hey, I've enjoyed junior high school, the best 20 years of my life. If I ever get out of junior high school, sir, and I make it to John Jay, which is really a premium place, I hope to find you in there, and I might even take one of your classes and get a D out of it. But that's all right. It'd be a well-deserved D, no doubt.
I would love to have you in one of my classes, but it would be to speak.
Well, I would appreciate
your knowledge.
Well, I know this. I know that if I get a D out of your class, Brother Heavey down there will find a way to straighten it out and
talk offline.
To look like an A. I could have used you when I brought my report card home, sir.
You can get a student Metro card.
Well, I needed one after I brought my report card home. I needed a Metro card and more, but that's a different story for a different day. Gentlemen, I really have appreciated it. Thank you all. Go with God, and God bless America to you all.